Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I am the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. I love this conversation and I love Rutherford because he's so knowledgeable at every level of different organizations. He's got a corporate background in pharma and he was very successful himself as a leader. And when he ultimately left the pharmaceutical industry, he took that knowledge and turned it into helping other people become really great leaders and much better at their leadership so they could be more effective and have more influence. And Rutherford has been instrumental in turning me on to John Maxwell. And as he pointed out last time, I was very proud of myself that I've read 11 John Maxwell books, and he correctly pointed out that I have about 70 or 80 more left. The ones that I've read, I've been just really impressed with and have had tremendous impact on me. Several of them I've read twice. The one on asking questions is one that I just think is so amazing and something that I wish I was much better at. And just some of the other things that he's put together are just extraordinary. So thank you for your study of John Maxwell. Thank you for incorporating that into the way you've been helping people these past years in getting them to see for themselves how to have more influence, how to be better leader. Last time we talked about retention. So as a leader, what can we do as leaders to create an environment that retains others who could be good leaders? John Maxwell talks a lot about one of the really important aspects of leadership is it's not necessarily about you, certainly afterwards. It's building the team so that you can step aside at the appropriate time and have leaders be even better than what you've created. What would you like to chat about today, Rutherford?
So yeah, I think you hit it on the nose. I think we're going to talk about building teams and sustaining teams, and how do you build a team? When do you know a team's not performing at their highest? What can you do, to continue to grow your team? And what are the pitfalls? So there's I think a seminal book in one of the great books that's not John Maxwell is by Jim Collins, From Good to Great, right? If you know that book, and in that book he talks about getting the right people on the bus, and not only getting the right people on the bus, but getting on the bus in the right seats. And I think if you think about a team and how to build it, that's the key, is getting the right people, but putting in the positions where they can be successful. And that's the key. Because some people, you might have the right person, but just doing the wrong job. And I can tell you that or have the wrong leader they could be in the right job, but they're the wrong person leading them, and so they can't perform their best, so they can't help the organization grow as fast as it could because of that situation. So those are the things we could talk about today.
Amazing. Appreciate that very much. What then, when you think about teams, what's the difference between what a team that's performing well and a team that performs sustainably?
It's a good question. So there's a team. So let me think. You've heard the term one-hit wonders, like those famous songs that they perform well. So they have, some I call it sometimes serendipity, or the broken watch theory. Like there's that watch is right twice a day, right? That because it's broken, it's right twice in one day. And to me, that's what, a good team is. If you're a good team, you're going to succeed every once in a while. You're going to succeed every 3, 4, 5, 6 years. If you're a great team and you sustain, you're going to succeed on a consistent basis. You're never going to um, perform badly. Now, so when I say perform badly, I'm not saying sometimes the results don't always get you to winning or coming in second place or third place. So if you look at teams like football teams and soccer teams and things like that, and you see coaches, they get really after a game that they've won, and you see them, you're like, why is this coach upset? We've won. They won the game, but they didn't play up to the way that the coach wants them to do. And so that means they're starting to build bad habits and it's going to catch up to them. So that's if you continue those good habits, you're going to be good over a long period of time. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for these habits that you build, these things that are in place that sustain you and and then you win on a regular basis, constantly. And if you think about companies, CEOs, different people, that's why they win. That's why they win consistently, not the lottery winners or the one-hit wonders.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're talking to Rutherford Pascal. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about team dynamics and what things make teams better so that the results improve. I think and we should note that today is September 11th. Um, Rutherford, where were you? Were you in New Jersey at that time? Were you nearby?
No, no. So it's one of those days you never forget where you were. So I was in California. I was living in California, and I was about to fly to Portland, Oregon, for business and actually seeing my boss and um, seeing things. So when it happened, I was in the gym, and obviously, these gyms, there's TVs all over, and this, you see the one plane go through, and there's a kind of a hush, and then the second plane, and it was, you know, that situation. But the story I'll tell you about 9/11, I was leading 10 people at the time. I was a first line leader. And one of the number one rep in the country was on vacation in DC. And so what happened with her is she was trying to catch an earlier flight out of she was trying to catch a earlier flight, getting from the East Coast back to California, and she missed she missed the flight. Well, that happened to be the flight that went down,
Wow.
right? And she called me. Well, first of all, I couldn't get a hold of her. I couldn't get a hold of her for about a day and a half, I think maybe 2.5 days. And she called me apologizing for not being able to get home. And I kept and because obviously you remember there was nothing running. There was no cars. I mean, the only thing you could do is bike, right? And she got home, I think, the following week or something like that. But she had survivor's guilt. She was in a really difficult place for a few months because she thought she was supposed to be on that plane. So that's what I remember. That personally about that event is one of my reps. We couldn't find her. We were in stress or distress because of that. And literally, and I was with Bristol Myers Squibb and company. And when you're talking about sustained leadership, we were just talking about this. This young lady was the number one rep in the country out of 3,000 reps 5 years in a row. So you talk about a sustained leader and sustained winner, and that's what happens. So that's my memory that ties into this conversation.
Well, I will continue to talk to Rutherford, and I'm going to encourage folks, if you have a question or a comment, to please raise your hand. That would be the ideal situation. If you can't find where the hand is, unmute yourself and interject at an appropriate time. We are going to wrap up in about a half hour or so, so we have about 30 minutes and a few more questions, and we will leave some time at the end intentionally for Q&A, at least 10 minutes. And so please feel free to interject along the way.
Bill has a hand up.
Bill, Bill Foch, you know a little bit about leadership, so thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I have a kind of a different perspective on it. But Rutherford, what I was curious about is what do you see as the attributes of a winning team or an ideal team?
It's a great question. So for me, the attributes is that they care about each other. So they're trying to help everybody else be successful. So there's always there's a goal that this project or team's trying to get to. So they want to help themselves. They want to do things, play their role, whatever their role is, and be successful. But they also want to help the person next to them, the person in their group also be successful. Because if everybody does that, they all win, right? The teams that I've been on that uh, really do well, it's a we, it's not me. And how are we going to win? One of the things I was asking people, there's four people that can win in the country, and I'd like all four to come from this team. And it wasn't a mandate, but it was thing I said, the talent in this room, your all ability, we all can do this. And that team, all four winners came from that group of 10, right? And the people that didn't win helped them win. And the people that won helped the other people that didn't win be successful too. So for me, it's the collective. It's if that team moves as one, right? You've heard the term, Bill, one heartbeat, right? When you have all these people, doing that same thing, that's what I think a spectacular team is.
Yeah, great. I probably best done offline, but Doug's right. I have a different type of perspective on leadership, more systemic than individual. But I think it would be best that might be an interesting conversation between us. I don't want to intrude on this conversation.
That's cool. We'll make sure you're connected if you're not already. So Rutherford, the way you just described that's great. And I, first of all, think of the New York Yankees, being a Yankee fan, and how things don't come together in some sort of a way like that. So this year it just is not happening. And I've been frustrated because I feel like the dynamics between the coach, the manager, the general manager, and the owner, there's dysfunctionality in all three of them, and they're building off each other along with their star player. And so the chemistry for 4 years, I've been like, this is can't work. And they continually repeat the same problems over and over again, where the chemistry it feels, why doesn't anybody else see this? I'm thinking to myself. So to go to your question, it's people helping each other, that's good, but you need results, and you need someone to figure all of that out. So how does a leader figure that out, and why can't the Yankees figure that
out? And by the way, Doug, Jennifer is a Man United fan, and she has the same she has the same issues. She has the same issues.
I think it's the owner in that case, is the father he was a brute, George Steinbrenner. But at the end of the day, he made decisions, and his son doesn't seem to have the same dynamic to be able to make the leadership decisions. Like, you're gone, even when sometimes you go overstep. And I just feel like the main core problem there is the son owning the business. But that's another story. But
So
that is leadership, right? Is like,
Doug, your question, your answer is that's exactly what it is. It's all, listen, when things fail, it's the leader, right? When things are successful, it's the leader, right? But the leader shouldn't, and usually the great leaders don't take credit. They give credit to the team, but right, but it's always the leadership. The thing I always talk about is if you think about teams and businesses that succeed, people say, like in a restaurant or a building, they say it's the location, location, location. And I'll say this, and people can argue with me, that there's lots of businesses that are in terrible locations that are extremely successful. And restaurants are some of those restaurants who are so far out of the way, you have to, how do I get to this place? I have no idea. There's no name on the door. The signage is terrible. And there's a line out the door. And the people come back. Why do they come back? They come back because the food's great, the service is great, the atmosphere is great, everything, they take care of you. And that to me is all leadership. Every single thing in leadership. If you looked at the pandemic, and there was lots of companies that were successful and a lot that failed. And the companies that were successful, they pivoted very quickly. They understood what the customers wanted, how they were going to deliver whatever product they were working on at that time, and they succeeded. And by the way, when I say succeeded, they might have their revenue might have gone down, right? But in a lot of cases, they kept the majority of the people that were working for them. They figured out a way to serve their customers. And by the way, there's a lot of companies that did better in that time frame than they did before because of great leadership. And some of those great leaders planned for the pandemic, actually had it in there, as far as one of the scenarios that could happen. So they had a specific plan for what they were going to do if something like this happened to the world, the markets, whatever it is, their competition. So they had all that. So that's great leadership. And for the Yankees, the Man Uniteds, the Mets, all those types of teams that are having some issues, right? It's leadership, period.
What are some of the signs that we know what the signs are when there's a underperforming team?
Yeah.
We can see it.
Yeah.
There are many scenarios and good scenarios where there's high performing team. And let's talk a little bit maybe about what that looks like. You talked a little bit about some of the characteristics of those, and in particular, helping each other. I love that description. There's more to it than that. What
Yes.
does a high performing team, in addition to helping each other, look like? And then how does one identify when it might be losing its edge? Are there aspects of that we should be aware of?
Yeah. So I talked about the consistency. So the high performance teams, they are consistent over time. But if in fact you have a situation where you start seeing a team losing its edge, it's because they become complacent. They, the terminology is like they're reading their press clippings. They're being patted on the back too much, and they don't understand that there's a new day, and you have to win the day. You have to win every day. you can't rest on what you did yesterday, last week, last month. That's how companies um, become obsolete. So I mentioned at the beginning, Jim Collins' Good to Great. Jim Collins' second book was Great by Choice. And if you go back and the companies that he put in his first book that were no longer great companies, right? So they went through that exact same thing. They were great for a period of time, and then they got complacent. They didn't have their eye on the prize. They didn't pivot. They didn't think about the future, and they are no longer a great company. And teams are exactly the same way. If in fact you don't have this goal and that you're constantly trying to reach, um, if you think about every year you have to climb a mountain, but you never arrive, right? The people that win all the time always they understand that they never arrive. They have to continue to climb. There's another mountain. There's no, every year is this mountain you have to climb. And that's, by the way, the joy of it, right? You don't arrive. You continue to climb on a regular basis. Those teams, Doug, that do that win all the time. And the first sign is this is if they go back and they say things like, well, we won 3 out of the last 5 years. We're a really good team. We the other 2 years we came in last or or second to last, but we won 3 out of the last 5. So that tells me that they're complacent. They're resting on the laurels that they had a few years ago. They're not going to win on a regular, consistent basis because they're not thinking about what they need to do. They're not climbing that mountain every year. It becomes old to them.
Good to Great is such a great book. Not, whatever that is I just said, just not to be silly about it, but having just reread it, there's so many aspects that are interesting. One of them you kind of touched on there. When you read that book, there's so many stories of different companies, and he's talking about some of them as really great, and they're no longer great.
Yeah.
And he's also talking about some that are not that like failures, and
Mhm.
some of those have actually become quite good now. And then of course there's many that aren't in there because it's an older book, but it's fascinating that how that aspect of it about the sustainability and what's involved. One of the things he talks a lot about, and I think ultimately concludes, is that many times that is it fifth stage or whatever that is, the highest level of leadership stage leader, very often is very humble. And he
Yes.
talks about a number of them that very low profile, not about them. It's all about the company and the performance and things like that. So to me, that maybe raises the question about individual capabilities and personalities. Sometimes he seems to be pointing out that sometimes people's personality gets in the way of being a leader. I presume also for team dynamics, we all have been in teams where someone's been an outlier, and it feels like there's some aspect of what they're doing that's spectacular, but it also can undermine the team. So there's, I guess, two different levels of questioning. One, as a leader, are there times when the personality is a burden and needs to be addressed, and what about when it happens within the team?
Yeah, there's no question. So what you just said about these teams that are successful over time, they give all the glory, all the praise to the members of the team. The leader or the CEO or whatever, he or she is not in the limelight. They might be on whatever CNBC or whatever, telling these things, but they're not the person that in the culture of the company, the team gets all the credit, right? And if they continually get the credit, they continually grow and they'll continually do well because the whole focus is on that team. And when they continue to have that, they'll do very, very well. But if then the praise or this leader starts taking credit or wanting credit, that starts to disintegrate the team. And we were mentioning sports, and Gabriel, you have your hand up. Let me just finish this, and we'll come to you. The best example I can give you in sports is the Dallas Cowboys and that team, about the owner and the ego and how that went from a great team to where this person wanted so much credit that he fired the coach because he thought the coach was getting too much credit, which is crazy. You've just sabotaged years and years of winning, of doing well, because you wanted to be in the limelight more. And CEOs do that, teams do that, because they're taking too much they want too much of the credit, and they do things to get themselves in the spotlight instead of the focus being on the players that are on the team that are actually doing 99% of the work.
One of the sports leaders that he talks about in Jim Collins does is John Wooden.
Yes.
There's many different learnings from that. I guess they were quite close, but what people remember, some of us older remember, is that so many years of championships and so many years of success. And I think it took 15 years of working as the head coach for them to actually win their first championship. It took them 15 years. And so I wanted to make the point, first of all, to build what you said, there are sports analogies. And number two is sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. These leaders are working and trying different things and building the team in different ways and getting the dynamics and systems and team in place for the success to happen. Gabriel, you know a lot about leadership. Gabriel's our executive director in Mexico City and already started out really strongly. Did you have a comment or question?
Yes, about the leadership, like you're talking about this high virtual leader that doesn't take credit for the things that he has done, and he's humble, and that's amazing. But leaders are human also, and my question will be like, how to, when things are not going right way, or as the leader expect this, because of the market, because of the performance, because it comes all to the guilt of the leader, and that's the price that you have to pay to be in this chair. But how to manage the turmoil, the emotional turmoil that probably a leader can be, and also how to manage the emotional process that the team is working. Because probably, in my experience, nobody actually, in their normal sense, will be underperforming because they can, or because they're willing to underperform. They are performing the way they perform because of they think that's the best way they can do. But I think like my question will be like, how to help leaders, or how to, when things are not going right, how to overcome that, how to build that mindset, how to be sustainable in a long term. Like I like to climb mountains. Like, what's the age of, okay, I climbed this mountain, now next year I will climb another one. But that requires new equipment, new disposition, new skills. That just, when things are not going right, how to create a better bond with the team, or how to manage your own emotions.
So it's a great question. So when things aren't going right, so it's back to the team. So this is especially important when you're a leader. Remember I said we, right? When things aren't going well, you bring the team together and you put a plan together with a team. Now, as a leader, you're going to probably think by yourself, what could we do? These there might be 3 or 4 different levers we could pull, right? And I've thought about it, and I think this is the best one. Okay? That you might do that on your own, but you really need to get the team together to make that decision a unified decision, right? So if in fact now you said, okay, and by the way, I'll tell you in my experience, what's happened happens so often is you want to put these things, we're going to do this, we're going to count on this, we're going to double down on seeing this customer, we're going to do, and and typically when you get this team together, they are more even stringent and exacting than you are going to be because they want to win. That's what happens when you get this group of people that really want to win that are in a bad spot for the moment. And because you put a plan together and everyone understands the plan and understands their role in the plan, that you'll come out of that faster doing it that way than you would not, right? Um, and so, listen, there's never been a situation, nothing in life is linear. You're never going to just continue to go up. You're always going to go up, down, and there's always going to be these little valleys, right? And you have to figure out what are you going to do. Some of them are temporary. Some of them are going to be take multiple quarters to correct themselves. But as long as you and your team have a plan and you are united in the plan, you can weather that storm and win. So let me give you a famous case, the Tylenol case. You guys all know about what happened with Tylenol. Okay, so Gabriel's saying no. So Tylenol, and by the way, Bill or Doug, or what year was that? It's like was it the early 80s, late 70s when that happened?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
So somebody messed up with the Tylenol. They drugged the Tylenol capsules, and people were getting sick and died because of they put some stuff in
Cyanide.
cyanide in Tylenol. And J&J, Johnson and Johnson is the name of a company who had Tylenol, and they pulled all of the Tylenol off the market, right? They pulled all the Tylenol, which is, by the way, their number one product, billions of dollars. And then they came up with this, they took a place and they came up with this child-proof or tamper-proof caps to help solve that. But it was because of the leadership. You couldn't be in a time, you got a product that's the number one product in the company. It's got going through all this times, and you're in the press every day, right? All this stuff is happening. And because of the leadership in the company, because of what they stood for, they were able to weather that, but they did it because of a team. They did it because they've had a plan, and they were able to come out of it equal or better because of that situation. Does that make sense? And I give you that because sorry, just came into my mind. Bill?
It was 1982.
Oh, it was 82. So here you go.
Yeah, I was just going to add one other thing to that, and that is if J&J didn't have a strong balance sheet, they likely would not have made the decisions they made. And I raise that because every day I sit in my office and right to the left, I have CNBC on. And when they talk about long-term planning, they're typically talking about the next quarter. So an aspect of leadership that is fairly important is actually thinking about what could happen and being in a position to be resilient. Because if you're choosing between doing all the great things that J&J did, and I'm a J&J stockholder, so I'm biased, okay, have been for years. But if they didn't have a strong balance sheet, they wouldn't have been in a position to do the things they did. So sometimes leadership is thinking through the various scenarios that you may be in, and in particular, keeping a perspective that is something beyond next quarter's results, which would mean that you are an anomaly with most CEOs these days. That was the thing I wanted to add.
So Bill, I couldn't agree with you more. The only reason you're right. The only reason they were able to do that is because they had a strong balance sheet, but they also had an ethos that told them that they had to do that, right? That was the right thing to do, and it was the safest thing to do, and they came from that. It's really important. It's what I talked about before with the pandemic and scenario planning. I put together when I was the last company, I had a 5-year plan. I mean, we talked about what we were going to do 5 years from now with every single thing in the organization, and how much, because everyone has this scenario plans, and we looked at all these different market forces, and it's good, better, best type of mentality, and you think about all those situations, and you go through that all in your mind. That is part of leadership. That's really important, that we understand that you think about the good, better, best thinking, and how, and think about every situation. Mr. Cook has his hand up.
Let's bring J&J and Tylenol into today. They got a similar situation coming up with Kennedy and autism. Do you think, with social media being such a dominant influencer now, how is management and the team going to handle what's going on now with Tylenol? From a team perspective, what would you do if you were the boss?
So yeah, I just for context, does everyone know what Jim's talking about with the Tylenol? Because I think there's a story that they believe, RFK believes, that Tylenol might be causing autism. Is that correct?
The charge is that females taking Tylenol when pregnant would be the cause of the huge increase of autism in birth.
Bill, you sound like you want to answer that.
I think we should avoid heads of agencies where their biggest claim is a worm in their brain. I mean, I'd offer that. But the real key, I think, on this is there in fact truth to the claim?
Yeah.
And now I'm going to add, I know this a little bit, and I'm biased, okay? Because I've got, money riding on, I'm betting on J&J, have been doing so for decades. But there's no issue at J&J in terms of short-term versus long-term, at least from a balance sheet standpoint. They don't have that problem. As to how to deal with this particular claim, which, they're obviously running with, I don't know. I don't have any inside information, but I think the likelihood that J&J understands the efficacy of their drugs and any particular risk a hell of a lot better than virtually any government agency. So my guess is this is nonsense. I don't know this. I'm telling you, it's my guess. Okay. But then they have to ride the, social media storm, because even nonsense, is something that you have to deal with in today's social media environment. But I think you deal with it in all cases with truth.
Yeah.
Here's the data.
Yeah. And from a leadership perspective, right? And Jim, I'm going to get back to you. So from a leadership perspective, you have to lead through that. So if in fact, so if it's correct, let's just think about the scenarios. If it's correct, then what would be the ideal thing for Tyler to reformulate or change or adjust or whatever? That was what they would, if in fact it was correct. If, like Bill said, if it's not correct, then it's basically disputing it, with facts, science, all that kind of stuff. So, and going on a campaign, to talk about that from a leadership perspective. And there's many ways to do that. But I think you have to think about all these different things as a leader. Is it, has it hurt my sales? Is the because lots of times things come on social media and it's out there, but there's very little to no effect, right? And sometimes the effect is temporary, and you're going to weather you're going to weather the storm. So all that has to play into what you're hearing and what you're doing and how much information you have, um, to go there. And that's just part of leadership, right? And it's all the information. And then as leaders, as a team, you have to make the right decision for the people you serve, right? And then obviously your shareholders. I will tell you this is me. I care about the people I serve first and my shareholders second, because if I serve my people first, my shareholders will be served eventually better. But I always think about the people I serve way before anybody else. And I think, what Bill was talking about with we have a short-term mentality. We are now a quarter-to-quarter type of mentality for companies. We only think about, Bill just said long-term is the next quarter or two quarters. I think in years, and great leaders think in years and multiple years, and that's why they're successful.
I'd like to open up the floor. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts either about that topic or anything else? And while we're waiting for anyone to unmute and ask any final questions, Rutherford, would you be able to do a wrap up on this topic and
Sure.
tell us a little bit more about what we should remember out of this session?
Yeah, so the number one thing I think for a leader is standards, right? Standards, expectations, right? If you look about leadership and building good teams, if they meet the standards all the time, no matter what happens in the marketplace, they're going to be successful, right? If you have a team that is performing at its highest and the market is just tanking, it's doing really well, but they're growing at a higher pace than their competitors, even though the market's declining, that's winning, right? If that makes sense, right? If the market's declining by 12% and they're declining by 6%, that's winning. Right? If the market's declining by 12%, declining by 13%, that's not winning. I just want to be clear on that. So it's always the standard. The way to think about how to build teams is to have clear expectations of and make sure everybody knows their role. You are continually making sure that you are supporting them in that role, and you're asking them, how can I help you be more successful? As a leader with a team, that's what you want to continually do. Always ask them, how can I help you be more successful? What do you need from me, the company, to make you more successful in your role? If you ask that on a really consistent basis, everything is probably going to be fine, and you're going to find out things that are going wrong much faster if you're consistent with those questions and you're consistent with that behavior.
So many great leaders here in the room, and Steve Nikokiris, thank you. I got your message that you're not able to speak, and so all good. So thank you for joining, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. I know, Jennifer, you've given a lot of thought to these, and you've been involved in these. And Gabriel, thank you earlier for your question and your leadership ongoing. Franz, I know you've got an event coming up, and it's a little bit off this topic, but nonetheless, what uh, leadership plays such a key role in what you'll be talking about. So thank you for joining in the conversation today, and welcome for yours. I don't remember exactly when yours is, but I think it's now in early October. So thank you for joining. Jim Cook, thank you for your ongoing leadership as well. It's funny because you work with some really interesting companies, and you see, going back to the question of when does an individual's personality get in the way. Sometimes those startups, at least my own experience is, a lot of times those startups, oh my God, the personalities, are, because they've got a great idea or they've got something really brilliant, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a great leader or can run a company, right? It's almost like guaranteed that they're not. And so God bless you for the work that you do to get great ideas, and yet you've got the dynamics of teams almost invariably, almost always, that are dysfunctional. Ruby, thank you for your leadership and all that you do. Unless someone has any final comments, I'll pause here for a second and give you an opportunity to unmute and ask, and then otherwise I'll close the room.
I got one more thing for social media. I think there should be a button that says, "Why are you lying?"
Jim, I'm a kindred spirit.
That button would be pushed all day.
Why do people do anything, right? We're human beings, and what drives people isn't always what drives us. And so, but it is what it is. One thing that I'll leave you with is Rutherford is so calm and so reaching anger. I would imagine Rutherford is probably really difficult for you. You've honed your style too, and you're inherently that style. Last night, my wife was counseling our daughter on something that was going through in her life, and she was very happy that my daughter had gotten angry in a particular circumstance. And I was like, okay, well, that's okay, but I'm not sure anger is something that you should have out on the table. In that particular case, I could see how it might have worked, but now that that's happened, to be really a good leader, you've got to manage that, right? And you manage it really well. Congratulations. It's very clear.
Well, thank you. So no great decisions are made when you're angry, because it's an emotional decision, right? And especially as a leader, you listen, you can get upset about something, but you have to be still clear-headed, and you have to lead their team, and the team goes by I always talk, you guys know the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, right? Anybody?
Well, thermometer is doing some sort of a regulation, right? And the temperature is just the temperature, reality.
Yeah. So you want to be you want to set you set the temperature in the room. The thermometer just reads the temperature. The thermostat, you set the temperature. So you want to set the temperature of the room on a regular basis. By the way, you're doing that even though if you didn't know you're doing it, you're doing it. And if you're angry, or if you're playful, or if you have this sense of wonder or curiosity, you're setting the temperature of your team on a regular basis. So that's the thing that you always want to consider, how you walk into the room, how you present yourself, because your team feeds off your energy and how you present yourself, good, bad, indifferent. And when times are tough, yelling and screaming don't help solve that problem, right? Having clear heads, clear minds, and really thinking about a plan helps solve the problem, right? You can get mad by yourself, like you can yell and scream and kick and like, but when you're with a team, you have to think about how do we solve the problem? How do we get past this? How do we and how quickly can we get past this? And how is our messaging and all these different things? And you got to be clear-headed. When the house is on fire, the person you do not want to follow is somebody yelling and screaming, right? That's not who you want to follow at all.
Let the sage brain take over. Positive intelligence.
Yeah.
Thank you. I saw a hand go up, but then
I think Gabriel, did you?
It was myself.
Sorry, it was Darren. It was Darren. Sorry, Darren.
Yeah, I raised my actual hand. Sorry. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Rutherford, but I think it's important to acknowledge that anger is there.
Oh, yes.
Right. I mean, that's sort of the transparency part, just being authentic, not acting out on that anger. No way. Don't show it, but just say, hey, just acknowledge this makes me angry.
Yeah.
Right. And that authenticity, I think, goes a long ways in making you human, right? As a leader.
Yeah, and so I couldn't agree more. You have to be authentic. You have to, you can't listen. You can't be if you are if in a situation you should be mad and you're not. That's just as bad, if not worse, right? If you don't show that. So but what I'm saying is, if you're trying to solve the problem, you have to be clear and calm, and and you might say, I had I had a situation where I was talking to our lawyer in the company, and he said something that made me extremely crazy. And I told him, I said, give me 30 seconds to take a deep breath. Because if because I needed to just calm down, because the things that were going to, in my mind, coming out of my mouth was not going to be positive. It's not going to help the situation. So you need to be like, and when I got off, that minute, I said, listen, that statement you just made that somebody else said, I couldn't be more upset about. And I said, that's how I said it, but I had to calm down before I said it. Because
Makes sense.
Before you reacted. Yeah.
Well, we need to wrap up the room, but I'll leave you with another sports analogy. And Jim, you brought him up, Phil Jackson. I'm old enough to be a New York Knicks fan back in the day. What was it, 72, 73, when they won the championship with Earl the Pearl and Willis Reed and Phil Jackson and Jim Bradley. What was his name? Tom Bradley? Jim? I forget. Bill Bradley, the senator, right? So what an amazingly brilliant team. But Michael Jordan in his last days, and I might have either been John Maxwell or in the Good to Great, talk about when you're a leader, you want to hang out with people that are above you. And Michael Jordan's such a great athlete and a leader. The only coach he wanted to play for was Phil Jackson. Mm-hmm. There's a guy that's really smart, brilliant, and calm, and always in the sage mind, and a brilliant coach. And so ultimately a great leader and very successful. So thank you, Rutherford, for being the Phil Jackson of Global Chamber and taking us through such a great conversation today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the questions. Great questions, guys. Thank you, guys. Have a great day on this, sad Memorial Day. But thank you for the questions again.
Thanks, Rutherford. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks all. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Thanks, Franz. Jim, for all the things. And Steve, thanks for participating.